Welcome to another of the video podcasts from the Centre for Economic Policy Research on the fast-moving economic impact of COVID-19. My name is Tim Phillips. For weeks, Italy was the global centre of the COVID-19 epidemic. And as we record this, there have been more than 80,000 confirmed cases and more than 8,000 deaths in the country. The social measures that Italy took that initially seemed dramatic to outsiders are now commonplace across Europe. But what is next for Italy? Is its economy and political system strong enough to withstand this shock? And how can policy, both domestic and European, help? Today, we're discussing this with Alberto Alessina of Harvard University. Alberto, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
First, Alberto, most important, are your friends and family well?
Yes, they're well in the sense that they're not sick with the virus. They're not well in the sense of being completely stressed and worried and locked up and in a really bad situation. But personally, I don't have any close friend or relative that has the virus, as far as I know.
Let's have a look at the progress of the virus from Italy's point of view. Italy's finance minister 2 weeks ago, that's Roberto Gualtieri, he said nobody will lose their job because of the virus. Do you think that this message should have been stronger?
Well, I don't think it could have been stronger than that. I think that the real question is this message realistic? I think that it should be as realistic as possible in the sense that every effort should be made to give some insurance about what's going to happen for two reasons. One, for the obvious reason that people that lose their job, they have to receive support. But second, because if you give some certainty to people, reduce the uncertainty, people may feel less worried and consume a little more or spend a little more or support the economy a little more rather than being, in addition to losing income, also losing some certainty. So I think it could not have been stronger than that. The question is it implementable completely or not?
And in the short term, has the Italian government given enough support for Italian firms that are affected by the virus?
To be honest, I have not followed the detail of what they're doing on firms. I think a lot more will need to be done in the future. It depends on how long the situation will continue. But most importantly, it will depend on what Europe will do. It's clearly that there has to be a European level response, and what the Italian government will be able to do will depend also on the level of European cooperation.
I mean, another constraint on Italy is its high public debt, and that debt has remained high. It has been slow to clear up bad loans in its banks. There's nothing anyone can do about this now, clearly. But I suppose this is a hard lesson in fiscal rigor, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. I think that unfortunately it is. I think that people that were, first of all, let me say, to be clear, that this is clearly not the time to worry about reducing the debt. The debt in Italy will go up a lot. The question is how to handle that situation later. But I think this is a good lesson for those, and there were many who argued that it would be okay to borrow all the time, but the interest rate were low, let's borrow as much as we want, because that was wrong, because any reasonable theory of fiscal policy implies that you should have low debt when the situation is normal, in order to be able to borrow as much as you can when you have a crisis. So you need to borrow when you are in a crisis and be rigorous when things are normal. Unfortunately, some countries have not been rigorous, but things are normal. But this is not the time to make those countries pay for their past mistakes.
There was a bad moment for Italy in the markets on the 13th of March. Christine Lagarde, her comments on what the ECB's role should and should not be, the limits of what she described the ECB's role should be. They caused a very dramatic reaction. Italy's bonds suffered a lot from that before she walked them back. Was this just a one-time gaffe, or can we read more into it?
I hope that it was a one-time gaffe that showed Christine Lagarde inexperience. I hope it's only inexperience and she will learn, but it was an incredibly bad mistakes. Quite surprising that either she was purely advised by someone or it was clearly was a mistake. It looks that what followed showed that the policy of the ECB was not what Christine Lagarde implied, but this is not the kind of mistake you expect from a central banker in the middle of a crisis.
And so let's have a look at what's next. The ECB has acted. Its new asset purchase plan shows that it's committed to buying up debt, including Italy's debt. Should it also be, as some of your colleagues, your Italian colleagues have suggested, be backing perpetual euro bonds, for example?
I think so. I think that there are several ideas circulating. The ESM lending to countries with minimal conditions, namely that those loans are made to for virus expenses. It's hard to, in a situation like this, it's hard to see how almost any expenses cannot be related to the virus. But in any event, some basically unconditional loan or this Eurobond, that lasts forever. I think that we may discuss the details of what financial technology is superior, and I may not even be the best person to go into that. But the critical issue is that really is important for people is not so much that these technicalities of how to do it, but the question is very simple. Is there a common response so that Europe, the European citizen as a whole, will pay for the cost of the virus, regardless of whether the cost of the virus are higher in country X and lower in country Y, but there is a common response because it is a common shock. And if the answer is yes, then Europe will make a big step forward. If the answer is no, I'm afraid that Europe may actually collapse. Of course, the problem is simple, that some countries, Northern European countries, say, okay, Italy borrowed for no reason 130% debt to GDP ratio. Why should we help them? If they are not borrowed, they could do much better. How do we know that if we give them, quote unquote, give them more money, they are going to waste it again? I understand it's a reasonable concern. On the other hand, as I said, this is not the time to make people pay for past mistake. There will be plenty of time when the virus is over to bring back things to normal, and eventually, yes, make people that have made in the past and possibly even make mistakes in the future pay for those, but not now.
Yes, if this debate about who should pay for the debt burden from the virus is resolved so that national governments become responsible for it, how high are the stakes here? Do you really think that this could be the end for the euro, the breakup of Europe?
Yes, I think that catastrophes are rare, even though in the last 20 years, in between September 11, the financial crisis, and the virus, we have seen probably more catastrophes in 20 years than humanity has seen in recent years. But so catastrophes are rare. So I'm not the kind of person that goes around predicting catastrophes every other day. But if the Northern European country had said, or will say, or will say something similar to the Stability Pact is pretty much there, or Italy should have to pay on their own, and there's no Eurobond, no nothing, then yeah, there is a very good chance that that may happen, or that Italy may leave, or who knows. But yes, I think the stakes are very high. I think my feeling is that Europe is moving perhaps slowly, but in the right direction, in the sense that suppose that after Christine Lagarde said what she said, the European Central Bank did nothing, and the northern country had said the Stability and Growth Pact stays the same, that would have been a catastrophe. Now, this has not happened, so I'm more optimistic now, but I think the risk is there.
Is there the possibility that the recovery from this crisis might help drive reform in Italy's political and economic institutions, which haven't always functioned as efficiently as they should do in recent times? Or is it too early to think about that?
It's a very hard question. To be honest, the real question is, I don't know. The real answer is, I don't know. A slightly longer answer is that it may depend a lot on what happens in Europe. If we have, if the perception is Europe has done nothing for us, then the populist anti-European parties, with some reasons, to be honest, will start yelling and screaming even more, and that may lead to certain political consequences. On the other hand, if Europe helps, the opposite may occur. In terms of broader institutional or life reform in Italy, perhaps people will learn. Italy has been very far back in terms of technology. Perhaps people will learn how to use technology and the Wi-Fi more. There may be some feeling that Italians will learn, as they are doing, because they are doing reasonably well in respecting rules of behavior. So it's pretty hard to tell, but there are some. A lot will depend on Europe.
Thanks, Alberto. And Alberto and Francesco Giavazzi of Bocconi University have contributed a chapter about Italy called "The EU Must Support the Member at the Centre of the COVID-19 Crisis" to our book, Mitigating the COVID Economic Crisis, Act Fast and Do Whatever It Takes, which, of course, you can download from the COVID-19 section of voxeu.org. And it goes without saying that there are new contributions relevant to Italy's situation being published on VoxEU every day. We'll see you soon, Alberto, and give our regards to your co-author, Francesco.
Thank you very much.
And for all of you who've been following and contributing to our coverage over the last few weeks, stay well, and we hope to see you soon. Goodbye.